Today, we are in Winterset, Iowa, Madison County, Iowa. Bob, tell the folks where we're in front of.
We are in front of the John Wayne Birthplace Museum, as he said, in Winterset, Iowa.
Which means when this guy's with me, we're day tripping with Bob DeWitt. And on this episode, we visit with Brian Downs. He is the director of this fine establishment, and you're going to be amazed at this man's fascinating life. We only just rubbed the surface, don't you think, Bob?
Oh, incredible life.
He knew John Wayne, and he ends up being the director here of this museum. And I want to thank you for watching, and I also want to thank our sponsors, Griner Auto Body of Washington, Iowa, using state-of-the-art techniques and decades of experience to get your car back on the road after an accident. Car Doctor of Washington, Iowa. No matter who Frankensteined it, they can fix and clean and customize it. McDonald Boneyard of Keota, Iowa, for all of your farm equipment and auto recycling needs. Hinshaw Trailer Sales of Richland, Iowa. You need a trailer. They've got your trailer, and they fix what they sell and don't in their full-time repair shop. Girling Repair of Winfield, Iowa. If your mower is dead, call Fred, your Husqvarna, Aaron's, and Gravely dealer. B&B Pro Paint and the family of Jet Stops, and Blue Dog Lawn Care of Wayland, Iowa, for all your residential and commercial lawn care needs. And when that snow starts flying, they'll get rid of that for you too. They all present Southeast Iowa today. I'm John Bain, author of Christie's Journey, The Beat Goes On, and your host. Bob, let's go inside and visit with Brian.
Let's go.
Brian, thank you for being on Southeast Iowa today. It's wonderful to have you on the show.
John, this was a nice surprise. It wasn't a lot of notice, but I did a little background on yourself as you did with me. I figured this is a show we can't miss.
Well, thank you so much. Did you hear that, Bob?
I heard that.
That's pretty cool. Well, I want to do just this episode. I'm going to end up, I want to tell people we're at the John Wayne Museum here in Winterset, Iowa.
John Wayne Birthplace and Museum.
Correct. Thank you, sir. And you're the director of this fine establishment. I've never been here before. Bob has, and Bob said, "You've got to go here, John." And I started doing a little research on Brian Downs, and I'm like, I need to talk to this gentleman. He not only was he friends with John Wayne, he worked for the Chicago Tribune. He also managed Buffalo Bill Wild West show. If I said that wrong, I'm sure you'll correct me. I'm like, where do we start? How did you get here in Winterset, Iowa as the director?
It's really such a simple story. It all was born in good manners. I would travel west a lot for my newspaper work, and Iowa was always drive-through country. And so I'd come through here and see the sign John Wayne Birthplace on the highway, but it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm headed to Denver. And I feel, well, everything's closed, it's dark, and didn't have a big history at that point, so I just kept going. So one day I looked on the museum's website and ordered some John Wayne letterhead just for fun personal correspondence. And the woman who took my order provided a handwritten note in the order, and she said, don't forget next year's John Wayne's 100th birthday, which was not on my radar at all.
And would that have
2007.
2007.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So at that time, I was doing a tribute to Buffalo Bill's old-time Wild West shows with cowboy singer Michael Martin Murphey, and at the Great Circus Parade in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Wow.
And it was a tribute show. It was very authentic in every detail, except Buffalo Bill had hundreds of cast members. We had dozens.
Okay.
But it was just something I loved to do, and recruiting the performers and writing the script and auditioning old-time brass bands. And we wanted to give the audience as much of a taste of an old-time turn-of-the-century Wild West show as we possibly could.
Well, it sure sounds like you did. I recently was in LeClaire, Iowa in June for their 190th birthday.
Yes.
And they had a Buffalo Bill Wild West show there, but all of their music was pre-recorded.
Oh no, only live music. If Buffalo Bill didn't do it, we didn't do it.
That's incredible. That would have been something to see. How long did you do that?
I counted, we did about 75 performances over 5 years.
Wow.
And we did county fairs, we did horse exhibitions, we did a big parade event in Milwaukee, and we toured the Michael Martin Murphy shows. We were his halftime entertainment.
I'll be darned. So, who was Buffalo Bill?
Different ones every year.
Okay.
Some thought they were Buffalo Bill and weren't, and some guys, I find out the quiet fellows are the most devoted. They're dedicated to doing the character. They're not so much a look at me kind of guy,
Gotcha.
but look at my character.
Yeah.
And those were my favorites. We probably had 3 or 4 over the years.
Now, did you find when you met John Wayne, was he a similar type of character as a regular person, as the actor, not the screen image and the image that the world knows of John Wayne? How much was he the same?
He absolutely was the screen image, but he was also incredibly common. I found when I moved to Iowa, I didn't realize how common he was, but he's just like any fellow who started his life in this part of the country. Like all bright and intelligent people I know, he was a great listener, and he listened as much as he talked. Very considerate. He leaned to the impatient side. If he didn't like the way the conversation was going, he let me know in no uncertain terms that we're going to switch gears.
Wow.
But he was very generous with the time, giving me an entire day out of his busy life.
So take us back to how that first happened. Like, what year was that, and how that came about?
It was 1977. I was a fledgling newspaper guy at the time, working in the Chicago Tribune newsroom as support staff. And I noticed at the Tribune, all the major political, entertainment, movie, everybody came to the Chicago Tribune seeking publicity, seeking endorsements. And so I just had a notion to write John Wayne a letter and see what would happen. And it was just weeks later, he replied. He said, I said, I'd like to come out to the house and like to talk about your career. And he shocked me. He said, yes, come on out to the house, which I didn't expect. I thought it would be an office somewhere with a set time.
So you actually went to his home?
His home in Newport Beach, California.
Wow.
And we were there from morning until past supper time.
So we're going back to 1977.
Yes.
There was no internet.
Correct.
He knew the Chicago Tribune by its reputation.
He knew it was important.
Knew it was important.
We knew he was important.
Yes, and come right to his house. So when you get to his house in Newport Beach, is it like, does he have guards at a gate?
No, there was a gate. It was a gated community right on the water in the harbor. But there was no guard. This was in May, maybe in the summertime they tightened up a little bit. Okay. But nothing, just drove right in. And I had his address, and the house numbers were painted on the curb, so I had to look down to spot it. And it looked so small to me. The house looked small on the front. But I noticed a automobile like the one you'll see in our museum later. And I said, well, that's a strange looking car. It was a 1972 Pontiac station wagon with the roof raised to accommodate his size. And so I said, well, this has to be it. So I went to the front door, and there was no answer, or I wasn't knocking properly or something. So I went around to a side door and came into the kitchen through a narrow hallway, and he had a cook working, preparing lunch, and she directed us to his patio.
That's probably the way he always went in.
Well, it could well be. I didn't like to sneak in somebody's back door, but I was expected, and I sure wasn't going to be late.
Right.
We had a 10 a.m. appointment.
Yeah.
So we didn't, and he had some business in the house he was handling at that time, so his cook escorted us to the patio. We waited out there, and it wasn't more than 10, 15 minutes he appeared, and we spent the bulk of the day sitting at his patio table overlooking the water.
What was your first impression when the man walked out?
Well, I was sitting down like I am now, and he came up behind me, and there was no noise. He was wearing hush puppy loafers, so it was silent. But I felt a presence, and I turned around, and I did one of these, like looking up like that. And he was almost shy, it's his home, he was almost on the shy side.
Wow.
I took my dad along. It was too good an experience to not share with somebody.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, Mr. Wayne, this is my father, Emmett Downs, and he said, your father? I thought you were his father. That was kind of deflating.
He had your dad, he was on your dad's good side though,
Very
right?
young looking dad.
Yeah, that is awesome. So you really feel like in your presence with him, he kept a bit of Iowa in him.
Absolutely. In the humility, I didn't sense a Hollywood movie star at all. And maybe for 5, maybe 10 minutes, he was intimidating because of who he was, because of his size, because I was in his home. But that melted amazingly fast, and I don't know how, just his natural ability to talk to people and get along with them.
Now,
His great interest in people.
I've got to ask, besides the hush puppy shoes, what kind of outfit did he have on?
He had on a short sleeve, looked like a custom made shirt. It had a little monogram on the pocket. He had just a gray slacks shirt, and he had a great big knit necktie. It was knotted, it was huge. It looked like the kind of fellow that had trouble getting clothes to fit him. But the necktie, it looked like a hangman's noose. It was just huge. I remember the size of a necktie more than anything.
That was probably the only bit of Hollywood he was wearing.
Well, and maybe not even that, but he did put on a tie because he gave permission that we could take pictures, and they were not for press, they were just for our own souvenirs.
Oh, nice. That is nice.
I remember him looking very fit, and this was right before he started having after his 1963 cancer. I also recall that he wore a toupee from about 1950 on. And we spent the whole day as close as we are right now, and I never noticed the toupee. It was a very good toupee, or I was too busy looking him in the eye.
Yeah. That's just incredible. I mean, I know I'm a fan of John Wayne. I know Bob is, so this is really special to get this firsthand, your personal experiences, sharing them with us, and now hopefully lots of people out there in the podcast world. It's just really incredible. Now, I've read in some of your background that after that visit, you were kind of befriended at that point.
We were certain. I think I'd be going out on a limb to say we were friends. We were not best fishing buddies or anything like that.
Right.
But he gave me his home phone. I could call his home at any time. If he was home, he'd pick up the phone. I asked him if he would, he gave me an exclusive on mandatory retirement. He was against it. And so he had a picture of himself stripped to the waist and with his stomach in and shoulders back, and saying, this is what a 72-year-old man looks like, basically, and who's going to put me out to pasture.
Good for him.
Then he asked him to write an essay on the Panama Canal treaties. He and Ronald Reagan were buddies for decades, but they had a falling out over that, which they reconciled later. But Reagan thought the canal belonged to America, and Duke thought the canal belonged to Panama.
Right.
And so he wrote an essay, a 7-page essay on that, which showed the man was highly articulate and highly educated. He made his points, and we didn't necessarily agree with him, but the Jimmy Carter, John Wayne side prevailed on that issue.
And he really wasn't a big fan of Jimmy Carter.
He was not. But they allies on that subject.
But the thing is, you look at today's political scene, and there's no getting along from either side. It seems like it just seems you're either Republican or Democrat, and there just doesn't seem to be a lot of cooperation from both sides together. But back then, the politicians and even the celebrities that were influencing, they could listen to other people's ideas.
Especially in Hollywood, a major Hollywood figure had to learn how to do that.
Yeah,
it was very important.
So if my memory serves correct, he passed away in '79.
Correct.
So from '77 probably up to '79, you had interaction with him.
We did. I'd say it wasn't daily, but we had mutual respect. When he needed something, he had something he wanted to say in a major newspaper, I was his contact. Wow. Still have the letters, and he would just, we had plans for another trip, but his health interfered with that.
I have to jump back, because I have to ask, inquiring minds like mine and others watching want to know, how did you end up with a career at the Chicago Tribune?
I hope you can edit. I was horrible high school student. I did not graduate with my class. I moved to Chicago for adventures, and I pretended to go to night school. I was bored with that, just simply not focused on school. So I went to work at 19 years old in the newsroom, applied for an office boy job, and it all took off from there.
Wow.
Because that's a university like none other. Because you have 600 people working together to put out a daily newspaper, and they're hugely talented, and they're just, the kindness of them and the concern we had for one another was just that I kind of learned as I went and picked up things little by little, just absorbing it.
And so at the time of when you made contact with John Wayne, what was your official title?
I was office manager for the newsroom, and I worked on the Pulitzer presentations, on our submissions for the Pulitzer board. I just kind of picked up by being around it. But was I a writer? No, not at that point, no. And Mr. Wayne said to me, have you done any of these before? And I said, no, sir, you're the first. At that point, he could have excused me. He could have shown me to his door.
He probably admired your honesty.
And we worked, and we delivered on things later on. So it was a good connection. Yeah, when you go to the museum later on, you'll see I'm in his date book, in his daily planner, and so he knew how to find me.
That is incredible.
And I knew how to find him.
That is incredible. Bob, do you have any questions for Brian?
You know, I'm glad the camera's not pointed at me because my mouth is just open. I'm amazed at the background of this gentleman, and I told you before I read an article about him years ago in True West magazine, and it's just an honor to meet him.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, this is all very humbling to me because we were nothing special growing up, but I was always curious about what's out there in the world, and so I never can boast of my own accomplishments except that I just wanted to be a part of things, and somehow we managed.
You made it.
You made it, and I'll tell you what, to the folks that are listening and the folks that are watching this podcast, do whatever your favorite search engine is. Do a search on Brian Downs. You're going to be amazed at this gentleman that I'm interviewing today and have on the show. Brian, I think at this point I want to wrap up this segment and start looking around the museum. But before we wrap up this segment, is there anything else that I should have touched on that you would like to share with the audience at this point?
No, I just think the John Wayne Birthplace, and I have to stress we are the John Wayne Birthplace. We're not the John Wayne Museum. That's very important for our right to exist because John Wayne's name and image is all very highly protected, but we operate as a historical site. And I think the best lesson of a place like this is that greatness can come from the humblest beginnings and circumstances. A little town in the middle of Iowa, and it's it all happened here, and heartland values are what make America great, as they say.
You're right. Well, thank you, sir. We're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, John. Thank you.
Thanks to Brian for being on the program. Thanks to this guy here, Bob DeWitt. He knows how to day trip. And thank you for watching. And I also want to thank our sponsors, Griner Auto Body, McDonald Boneyard, Car Doctor, Hinshaw Trailer Sales, Girling Repair, B&B Propane and the family of Jet Stops, and Blue Dog Lawn Care. This is part 1 of a 3-part series, so do not miss out on that. I'm John Bain. This is Bob DeWitt. Stay friendly, Southeast Iowa.